Welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. I'm your host, Maria Angelova, creator of the Angelova Method, an integrative approach to mind and body connection. The Angelova Method redefines your success equation to include a healthy body and a healthy mind.
Hi, Rebels, and welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And today, our special guest is Dr. Emily Splichal, who is a podiatrist and a human movement specialist. So, if you guys have listened to any of the prior episodes of this podcast, you know that I love the feet. And if you're a client, you know that we do a lot of footwork. So we've got the perfect person here who we get to ask all of the questions, because I will tell you how I got to Dr. Emily, and I've got some exciting products here. But before we get into all of that, Dr. Emily, first of all, welcome and thank you for saying yes to being here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes, great to connect with you. You're definitely a rebel into the industry you're in. And then second of all, before we dive into all things fit and movement and health, let's get to know who is Dr. Emily. So give us 3 words that describe you, maybe a little bit of a backstory behind each word.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So 3 words, I would say, curious. And part of that curiosity is that I just question things. I've questioned podiatry, which is why I practice completely different. I knew that there was more to the foot than just the foot. There was the rest of the body, the diaphragm, the pelvic floor. We'll get into that. So curious is one. I would say another word to describe me would be disciplined. And I am very disciplined because of being a gymnast. And it is a sport that just creates just self-discipline. I don't need someone to be hanging over me to make sure that I'm doing things. I'm very self-motivated. So that is one. And then I would say most people would say passionate. So I'm very passionate. And when I align with what I'm passionate on, I bring that into everything I do. And when I present and speak at conferences and publicly, people essentially just like, because they're just feeding off of the passion I have for the topic, which I'm talking about.
Yes, I love everything that you said, and I'm going to pivot on the first one, which is curious, because I can totally relate to that, because I am absolutely fascinated by the body. And I will tell you this, which you probably would appreciate. So my traditional training in fitness was the personal training, the group fitness, all of that. And then I got into Pilates training, and some of our first lessons were footwork. And I was like, are you kidding me? We're literally going to spend like time like doing footwork. That is the Maria who had no appreciation for the feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I started teaching, I started like, wow, the feet, and started getting appreciation for the feet of them being the baseline of our tower. And I tell my clients, if your feet are not right, you have the Tower of Pisa, right? You're going one way or you're going the other. So foot functionality, and I'll tell you, especially in people with injuries, in everybody, but especially people in injuries, especially elderly, I love footwork. And people are like, really, footwork? They're like, my back hurts. And I'm like, yep, do you see what your feet are doing? It's all related up. So I totally like I'm a sucker for that. And I love passion, because I think, I mean, the feet are the feet. If you don't get excited about the feet or the body, it's not that exciting, right? You have to get into it. So love that. So tell us, so you have a background with podiatry. You were actually a surgeon, correct? That's your background.
I was trained as a surgeon, and then, well, what's important is, let me go back a moment, is before I went to podiatry school, before I was even 21, I was a gymnast. I was a gymnast growing up, and that's important because it just set the tone of how I look at movements, the self-discipline within fitness as well. So just self-discipline to keep my body healthy, and I don't need a trainer. I will go to the gym by myself, all that. So then when I was from gymnastics, I got into fitness, and then from fitness, I went to podiatry school. And at podiatry school, I knew that there was this appreciation for movement in a way that was more than what I was being taught. So then that's where I was curious. I start challenging things that I was being taught. But what was important is that as I went through podiatry school and I started residency, it was so not fitting into my, like my soul, like just my identity. I was like, I can't, it's so conflicting. So I left and I got my master's in human movement. And then I came back and I had to learn how to be a surgeon because it's required in the US to be a licensed surgeon as a podiatrist. You have to do both to get licensed, that is. And then I did it for 5 years, was so not passionate about it. And I started exploring in that period of time about pelvic floor and diaphragm and fascia and just everything else. So I started to shape how I wanted to use podiatry. So I stopped doing surgery in 2017, put down my scalpel for the last time, and then I became officially a functional podiatrist, and I do regenerative podiatry as well. So I'll do regenerative injections along with the functional podiatry.
So let's talk about the functionality of the foot, the basic functionality of, let's take gait. So when we walk, you know, this is something I've come up with. I don't know if people use it. I call it the pizza slice. So I tell people, when you stand, you have even weight onto the ball of the foot and the center of the heel. And we kind of start from there. As you walk, what is the proper way to distribute the weight through your foot as you walk? Because most of us don't really walk around and think, how am I distributing the weight on my foot? We just walk until there's a problem.
Right, right. So our feet are our base, and I love that you referenced walking because that really is the most foundational functional movement that we do every day is walking. It's just innate within our nervous system. It's part of the milestone of what we look at with a child is, are they walking yet, right? That's the movement milestone that we're looking at because we know that it is foundational, it's functional, etc. That is based off of foot stability. Can you find a tripod? So really a tripod is a plantigrade foot. So 3 points of the foot with your toes long, straight, and flat, and a neutral arch. Can you find that, right? So that mechanically and structurally, your foot posture is laying the foundation for your total body posture. So the way that your legs, your knees, your pelvis, your T-spine, everything will sit on that base. That's an important part of it. But then also, as soon as we start walking, now we're experiencing ground reaction forces. The foot is striking the ground. You're getting vibration. Vibration and ground reaction forces is actually your body's energy. So how are you sensing it? How are you storing it? How are you using it, releasing it? So all of that is the dynamics of really the energetics of walking is housed within our foot because the foot feels the vibration. There's special nerves. The foot has lots of muscles that contract to absorb the vibration. And then obviously it's connected through different foot positions to propulse or catapult us forward when we release the energy. So really important from both a mechanical and a sensory energetic.
So when you walk, so when you stand, you have the tripod. By the way, I like that because I tell them pizza slice and then I'm like, and a healthy arch is a lifted arch, right? It's not a flat arch. So when we walk, we make a step forward. How should the foot, I call it articulate or move with each step that we take? What are the things to pay attention? So if people right now are like, get up and practice how you walk, which again, most of us don't really think about that because it just happens. It is so important to evaluate your gait. So you as a podiatrist, when you look at as a functional movement specialist, I think that's very important. How does a healthy foot move when it walks?
Yes. So some important parts is how are you striking the ground? So what is your initial contact? Initial contact should be on the outside of the heel or the outside of the shoe. So if the listeners want to look at their shoe and look at the bottom and look at the wear patterns, the wear pattern should be on the outside. That's totally normal. Sometimes I have patients show me and they say, I'm walking wrong. It's wearing down over here. And I say, that's actually how you want to wear down the shoe. From the outside of your foot, then you're going to very quickly roll into like a flat foot position. And you're absorbing impact forces and creating many stabilization responses at that same time. So it's not like you're just bleh, and your foot's falling down, right? It's a very interconnected, powerful thing that is happening between that. But then you'll essentially roll into a mid-stance position. And mid-stance is going to be a single leg. So single leg stability. This is where you want your tripod, stable, nice arch when you're on one leg. And your foot has to be talking to your hip. Because when you transfer onto one leg, you're going to pick up your other leg to take a step, right? To swing your leg forward. And as you do that, if you are not sufficiently stabilized between your foot and your hip, your pelvis will drop. And it'll drop excessively. Technically, it's called a Trendelenburg, but it'll drop excessively in a way that changes the energetics of walking, let's say. But you want like a stabilization, little drop, activate the hips, and then swing your leg forward. Now, the last part that I want to talk about is that you're going to roll into what's called a rigid lever. So if the listeners did a calf raise or just like pretend to they're seated and I'm looking at my foot right now in a calf raise, that position it's in is called a rigid lever. That position, I'm pretty obsessed with it, is very unique to Homo sapiens. So humans create this rigid lever. Primates don't do it. Your cat doesn't do it. The dog doesn't do it. It's something very, very unique to Homo sapiens, humans. And that lever position is what propulses our body forward so we can go somewhere. But it also is how you do this energy transfer, which is like a catapult response. I'll explain to people the way that you want to think about walking is like a bow and arrow. And you're pulling the bow back, that's you loading your connective tissue. And then when you swing your leg forward, you're releasing the bow and it should be essentially recoiling in front of your center of mass. And then you do that with the opposite leg and you repeat, repeat, repeat. So that's kind of how you want to walk. It should be rhythmic. It should be effortless. It should be fascial. We shouldn't be using our muscles when we walk. It's actually very fascial based.
And one other thing I would add, tell me if you agree, is you should not walk like boom, boom, boom. Right?
So that's the rolling. So you want it's rhythmic. Sometimes I'll explain to people it's kind of like a rocking chair. So things like a rocking chair that has like a traditional thing where you're rocking and there's a glide to it. So can you feel, sense, or imagine a glide or a lightness or a rocking or a rhythm? So that, yes, they avoid slamming their foot down and having any sort of jarring aspect to their gait.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it. I can keep talking just about that with you for like the next 3 hours. But it's for the purpose of making this practical for everybody who is maybe not into the fitness. We are. Let's talk about, you do a lot of stuff around barefoot movement. And we hear a lot, walk barefoot, don't walk barefoot, get a lot of stability, don't get a lot of stability. People are confused. What do we want to get, let's say, into daily movement? Like I will tell you, I have shoes with good support, but also right now, for those of you who are on the screen, I have sticky socks and I'm walking barefoot. And I'll show you a product that I would usually use, but right now I have it as a demo, so which is why it's not in my socks, but I will have that underneath my socks so that I get good, proprioception through my foot and make sure that my gait is what I want it to be. Because I have some issues, especially on one of my foot that wants to do its own thing. So I'm intentional to retrain it into how it moves. So let's hear the doctor's perspective about that.
Yes. So one thing I want to say first is when we say barefoot movements, that does not mean barefoot running. I first got into the industry and the timing of really what shaped my career was back in 2008-9 when the barefoot running boom was out. If listeners are familiar with Born to Run and the 5-finger shoes, Nike Free, kind of that whole space, right? That was around 15 so years ago. Everyone associated barefoot with running, especially at that time. And that's what I very much spent a lot of my time in my career saying is you don't have to run to take advantage of these shoes or this philosophy, right? Yeah. We are talking about daily sensory stimulation to the nerves in the bottom of the feet because they're so important to how you shape your posture, your muscles, your balance, your brain, everything. So can we go no shoes, no socks, walk around our house, do yoga, do Pilates, whatever it is, but something where every day we get sensory stimulation to our feet? Great, that's important. Then can we do something that is based around choosing footwear that supports that, if we can. Not everyone can, I get it, but that would be thinking of shoes that have less cushion, less structure. We can twist them and fold them, so there's just less to the shoe to give us more to the foot, right?
Yeah.
And then really even further than that would be, what are the recovery techniques that you're doing? Can you release and massage the bottom of the foot? Are you doing toe spacers to stretch and release the front of the toes? Are you doing short foot, which is a foot muscle exercise? Are you doing balance exercises, which is a great way to strengthen your foot? So it's a little bit more than just barefoot.
Right.
Actually, I have a book called Barefoot Strong, it's on Amazon. We sell it on our Naboso site. And part of that is saying, like, Barefoot Strong to me is a philosophy. That is a philosophy to life and movement and health. And what that means is that I am just appreciating the role that the foot plays in movement, longevity, and my overall health. And then I appreciate the complexity of the foot, but I appreciate what I need to do on a daily basis to keep my feet strong and make them a priority. That's what it means to me to be barefoot strong.
Barefoot strong. You know, I think what I think about that is having functional feet. And when I say functional feet, I mean feet which are healthy, they are mobile. You can stretch the toes, you can bring the toes together, right? They're mobile, you can articulate the foot. If you've had any kind of injuries, you know, maybe a bunion or surgery or something where your foot has been impacted, you have corrected that. I will tell you, I attended anatomy workshop, dissection, and we actually dissected the foot. Oh my God, like to see the bones in the foot, like it looks, you know, like when you look at the foot, you don't think like huge bones, right?
Yeah.
But when you look what's underneath, it's like, whoa, like those are enormous, which makes sense because they absorb a lot of our weight, right? And I do have to bring this up because before we started recording, and those of you who are just listening to the audio, I'm showing a product, which is how I got to Naboso, which is the company that Dr. Emily is the founder of, right? And these are toe separators. And I will tell you guys that I personally use those a lot. And many of my clients have those because as we age, and again, Dr. Emily, correct me, our toes, my poor elderly clients, their toes are literally on top of each other. And then they're like, I don't know why I have bunions and I don't know why I'm not stable. And it's like, well, and when we have to put these little things, these toe separators between their toes, it literally feels like you're almost like breaking their toes apart. But then they go like, oh, this feels so good, right? But we don't want to get to that point. Ideally, we would prevent our toes getting so glued to each other, right? And we would have that mobile, functional. And also tell me if you agree with that. I think a lot of times people think of the foot and the ankle kind of going together, which they do, but they're also two different things.
We interrupt this episode with a very special announcement. Please join us for a wellness retreat in Bali in April 2024. Inner Alchemy, the art of living fully. For more info, check episode description.
Yeah, so our toes, I'm glad you like the toe spacers, right? Those are, many people are actually into them. And it's funny that it is one of the fastest growing foot products that are on the market. And they do these market analysis of like toe separators, and it's just like it's crazy. But it's good because that means people are thinking about their feet. So I love it. So our toes, there is an ideal position that you want your toes in. Mentioned that earlier, that is long, straight, and flat, right? So long, straight, flat, and I would actually say separated too, not much like you had said. So why that's important is that part of it has to do with balance. So when we balance, our toes have this anchoring reflex. So they push down into the ground. The tips of your toes push down. And that's part of how you stabilize when you stand and when you walk. So we need to have that. That is called toe flexor strength. So toe strength or toe flexor strength, if you remember that. And it's just anchoring down. The other big part of that is actually when you take a step. So as you take a step and you push forward, your toe flexors are pushing in the opposite direction. So you need to have an equal and opposite moment to release power or energy or
Mm-hmm.
go forward, right? This is Newton's third law, I think.
Oh gosh.
I know. So sorry. Oh my gosh, everyone is just like traumatized now. I'm sorry. Okay. But
My daughter is studying Newton law, and the other day my husband was quizzing me and I totally failed. And he was like, really? And I was like, babe, it's been like, I don't know, 30 plus years. And now you bring up Newton law. Maybe I should brush up on my Newton laws.
Oh my
But they
gosh.
keep
Well, now you
coming
can
into my life.
I know third law, that has to do with toe flexor strength. Okay. But in all honesty, there's actually research that has been done, and it'll show if you have higher toe flexor strength, you can jump higher and run faster. So this is really important for athletes. This is important for day-to-day activity. And then this is important as we get older and we don't want to fall. So I am obsessed with toe strength and toe alignment, because I feel like in the foot, most people focus on the arch, like, oh, what's your arch height? Is it high? Is it low? Right? They just get very much into the back of the foot. And I want to spend some time obsessing on the front of the foot.
You know, I do have to tell you, my athletes, first of all, none of them thinks about toes and feet. Now, some of them lift very heavy weights. And you can see how, let's say, when they take a squat, now, mind you, they might do like a squat with a jump with heavy weight. If your foot position is not right there, that is like a recipe for disaster.
Yep.
And that is, you know, athletes, those toe separators that we talked about, big. But even creating that awareness of what is happening into your foot. I mean, yes, you're right. The arch is totally important, but it is not just the arch. It's the health of the entire foot.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say one of the exercises I focus a lot on with athletes is a squat and what happens to the foot when they squat. And then we do a lot of the foot articulations. How is the weight distributed between those? How much can they articulate the foot? You know, trigger point on the foot, the toe separators, like all of that stuff. And people were amazed of how their workout changes.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Doing it.
Fascinating stuff. Okay. Whew. I mean, we can keep talking for hours and hours. What is one piece of advice when it gets to the foot that you leave our listeners with? Anything about foot. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be foot related, but since we've been talking about feet.
I would say, well, so I teach a 5-point foot release to all my patients, but then also through Naboso. Where at Naboso, we have this ball, it's called a neural ball, and it splits into 2 pieces. So you can have 2 domes to release the feet. And I recommend doing a 5-point foot release. Technically, you hold each point for 30 seconds, so it's a 2.5-minute foot release. So I say, can you do that every morning, every evening when you brush your teeth? And if you could at least do that as the one thing that you do, is going to help you support your foot longevity. So I kind of joke that they say like an apple a day will keep the doctor away. Here I say a 5-minute foot release will keep the podiatrist away. So that is something that I advocate and that I recommend people do as the first step in their foot health journey.
And what I'll add to that, Dr. Emily, is it's not just the foot, it's the entire chain that goes up that foot. So you guys like literally stand up and like check out what your feet are doing, because the first time I do this with people, it's like the first time people realize they have feet. And then they're like, oh, it's tight. Oh, it's pulling. It's like, yeah, because for 50 years, you've done nothing with those feet, right? And you're wondering why this hurts and that hurts. So it's not just the feet, it's the entire chain, your knees, your hips, your back, your spine, your neck. People are like, what, my neck? I'm like, yeah, it's part of the tower, right? Yeah. I was going to ask you a quick question, which I think is relevant for a lot of people, bunions. And I'll tell you, I recently had surgery and I was fascinated because I started getting tailors bunions, you know, the bunions on the outside. And I was like, look at that. So I have to tell you, I resolved them by releasing the fascia and doing some exercises. But can we quickly talk from a podiatrist point of view, bunions? I mean, I think the exercise you recommended, that right there, is a great starting point for bunions and such, but any thoughts around that?
Yes, so a bunion, so a bump on the inside of the foot is a bunion. The outside of the foot bump, which is what you were describing, is a tailor's bunion. So just so the listeners understand, the inside bunion, which is the one that most people get excited about, what that is the bump is actually your first metatarsal head. And the long bones in the foot are called metatarsals. So it is the metatarsal head that popped out because the metatarsal deviated towards the midline of your body. And the reason why it deviated towards the midline of your body is because the joint, which is in the middle of your foot, that joint became unstable. Now, did it become unstable because of ligament laxity, hypermobility? Could be. That's some people. Okay? Could be because your rear foot or the back of your foot is not stable. So then that transfers to the middle of the foot and then obviously into the big toe. So was it that? I actually don't blame shoes on bunions. I know people like to blame shoes, but I don't, because it's actually much more about your foot strength, your foot stability, foot integrity, etc. What I will say that a lot of people will start to associate is as soon as you get a bunion, it's going to affect all the way up the chain. And I've had patients say, Dr. Splichal, as soon as my bunion became this big, it's like my glutes won't turn on. And they like, hello, sleepy glutes. And they're like, is that possible? Am I right? And I'm like, yes, you are, right? That they're so connected.
Yes. You know what? I tell my clients, a dysfunction in one place turns into a full body dysfunction. So just because you think like, oh, it's just a bunion. No, because guess what? When that bunion starts hurting, guess what? You start altering your footstep, right? You start altering your gait. The minute you alter your gait, it starts going up the tower. So right there, yes, I mean, things will start turning on, turning off, compensations will kick in, and you're going to start wearing and tearing the body much faster.
100%. Everything is connected. And that's why I have to practice functional podiatry, because you can't not look at the body integrated, right? And then that integration has to be in the solution that you provide for the patient, or in this case, we're talking about clients, right? So whoever is experiencing anything in the body, especially musculoskeletal, so like orthopedic, is the one for sure that you have to be looking at the feet. And then theoretically, you can actually bring it into other systems as well, just because that's how powerful the feet are.
Yeah, they are really powerful and fascinating. So Rebels, your homework today is to check out your feet and see what's going on in your feet, what discoveries, become best friends with your feet and see what's happening there. Yes. Is that a good homework task? Okay, Dr. Emily, I do have to ask you before we wrap up, what is your definition of rebellious?
Ooh, so rebellious would be to question things, like to push the boundaries, right? And like rebellious doesn't mean like, oh, I'm too cool for school. I have a daughter. I don't want her to be rebellious in that way. But rebellious to, let's say you are told something from a doctor and you're like, but is that the only treatment option, right? Is that my only option? Let me question things and let me seek more answers. So I'm rebelling against kind of the white coat telling me there's only one option and it's this, right? Or for me professionally, it was to say like, I don't think that's the full story of podiatry. So I'm going to question and essentially rebel against conformity in my profession for the advancement of the profession. So ironic. So to me, that's what it is. And we can be rebellious in little ways, like I'm going to rebel against being grumpy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And be like, no, I'm going to smile today. Right. So I think that's to me what it means.
Love it. Oh, thank you, Dr. Emily. Love this conversation. All right. Tell people where they can find you, websites, emails, social media.
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram. The Functional Foot Doc is probably the easiest one to find. Naboso, which is the sensory product line that I found, that is Naboso. So that's on Instagram. So Naboso_technology. And then the websites are my name. So dremilysplichal.com. So my whole name. Or Naboso is naboso.com. And then I'm on YouTube. And if you can't remember any of that, just Google Dr. Emily Feet and you will get
You'll find
everything that you want. Yes.
I love it. I know I met with somebody for lunch and I was like, are we connected on social media? She's like, I have so much social media. She's like, I don't know which channel you're talking about. It's like, let's connect on one, right? So we can be in touch. But Dr. Emily, thank you so much for all of the wisdom and fantastic information related to foot health and overall body health. Rebels, seriously, check out your feet, check out what they're doing. Huge part of your alignment, overall body function puzzle. And like test out the little things that the podiatrist told us to check out. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them, and do make sure that you follow up with Dr. Emily, follow her on all the social media. And of course, if you found this information, share it with your friends, subscribe, you know the spiel, okay? Don't forget to stay rebellious. That is the most important part. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Did you enjoy the conversation? Like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Want to redefine your success equation to include a healthy body and a healthy mind? Check out our website at rebellious-studio.com.